Unsolved.
Zodiac killer case, odds and ends. In this episode, I wanted to clear up a few things from the last episode so there's no misunderstanding. So I put up this graphic here, and it says the suspect appeared to be a heavy-set man. That information comes from Brian Hartnell. He said that the Zodiac was between 200 and 250 pounds. Then it says the voice seemed to be of a younger man. That was from the police operator who answered the telephone when the Zodiac called at 7:40. That was his opinion. The blue steel semi-automatic gun or pistol, that was from Brian Hartnell. The Zodiac pulled out the cartridge from the gun, and so Brian Hartnell got a good look at the gun. The width between the tires, the wheels, 57 inches, that came from Robert Graysmith's book, Zodiac, and he did a little calculation there, and so I'll explain that momentarily. And then the size of the tires and them being worn, this is a big clue, and so I'm going to go into that. And then another thing I put up was I put up this photograph of the telephone booth where the Zodiac called from. I learned more information about this. He most likely picked up the phone and dialed the operator and then asked for the police. And then he spoke to the policeman. And you can see it says time 7:40 because that's when the call was made. But it was dark out at that time. So this photograph makes it look like it was light. And then the last thing, I put up this distance from the crime scene to Brian Hartnell's car, and I estimated that distance. And it turns out it was, according to police records, 1,530 feet, which is about a third of a mile. And so my point was that it would take the Zodiac killer 10 minutes from the crime scene to walk back to his car. So a lot of people say that the time from 6:30 to 7:40, he had to go somewhere else before he made that call. But I don't necessarily agree with that, because that's a very windy road, and they're not allowing time for the actual crime and the Zodiac walking back to his car, and ever how long it took him to write on the car door. And then when it gets to Napa, he might have parked a little bit away from the telephone. So it's pretty close, the time of an hour and 10 minutes. First, I want to go over this part of the police report with wheel track width. And at the very bottom, it says approximately 52 inches from the inside of the left wheel to the inside of the right wheel. And that's not how it's done. It's done from the center of the wheels. And so Graysmith, he assumed or figured that the wheels were 4.5 and 5.5, being 10, and then he added 5 to it. So that's where the 57 inches comes from. And then the police measured 52 inches. And the thing is, this information isn't that important. It's not that significant, because a lot of cars have that distance between the wheels. It could be important if, one particular vehicle has that exact measurement, but you can't get an exact measurement. But here's the big thing. It says that the one tire was 4.5 inches wide, and the other tire was 5.5 inches wide. Well, I measured some tires, and most tires are 8 inches or more in width. So it's very rare that a car has a 4.5 inch or 5.5 inch width tire. But there are vehicles that do have that leg width, and they're normally foreign vehicles. So the question is, because I did some research, did the Zodiac drive a Volkswagen 1600 Type 3 vehicle like this one on the screen? Because there's not a lot of vehicles that have a 5-inch width tire at that time. And this Volkswagen does have that width of a tire, and more specifically, in the Riverside crime, the suspect disabled the VW Bug, a Volkswagen, and the Zodiac killer said a Karma Gia vehicle. And so how would he be so familiar with that vehicle? If he owned a Volkswagen himself, he might know. So I'm going to be looking more into this. So next, what follows is another illustration. Now, I filmed at certain times, but it's not at Lake Berryessa or Napa. However, it's around the same time of year, and it's at the same latitude. So the sun is going to set around the same time. So what follows is the Zodiac steps, and you can kind of get an idea of the lighting, or how much sun there was at the time of the murder and the phone call. 6:20, and right here I'm looking west. That's west. Alright, this is the 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. Zodiac driving back from Lake Berryessa, driving to Napa. And here's what it looks like at 7:40. 7:40 at night. It's dark. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved. And next week, we'll either return to Lake Herman Road, or I might have a big breakthrough on finding out what vehicle the Zodiac was driving by the tire measurements. That is not impossible. So I'll see you next week.